Welcome everyone. I'm Ronnie from Ronnie's Garage in Southern California. We're holding our monthly tech meet. What we're going to talk about today is something that I don't usually talk about too much, and that's going to be an Arnage. Rolls-Royce and Bentley went through some changes and transitions. These particular models came out in 1998, and by poring over this many times, I found out that the oil pressure sending unit, the thing that tells the gauge what to read when the engine's running, most of them, up until now obviously, all they are is a ground signal. So there's a variable resistor in your sending unit that changes the amount of ground that it sends to the gauge to tell the needle where to run. Well, this had a power feed, so it had an extra wire, and that was shorted dead. So I changed the oil pressure sending unit, and it fixed all the gauges, it fixed the air conditioning, fixed all these other problems. It's kind of a nightmare. And also recently I had a Seraph in. It was, I think, 2001, where the windows quit. Okay, the person took it to another shop. I was too busy to get to it, and I think they had a reverse light problem. And then they picked up the car and none of the windows worked, and they tried to blame them. And wow, changed the fuse on the windows, that circuit. I found the fuse, it's in the right kick panel. Windows worked. It's great. I thought, that's great. I'll drive it around the block just to make sure. Came back, windows didn't work. Damn it, right? It took me quite a while to figure this one out, but by using this same diagram, or the one for the Seraph, which is almost the same, I found that the reverse light circuits were fed through the actuator on the transmission. There's an electric box that bolts to the back of that transmission that changes the gears. So when you take that delicate on that, it doesn't have the floor shift, that delicate shifter, and you tell it to go to reverse, there's a little motor that shifts it manually into reverse, and then the computer takes over. So I pulled that off, and it had some markings on it. It looked like it'd been worked on. Oh, that's odd. Then I'm checking, and I thought, well, maybe it's just adjustment. I moved the wires around looking for shorts and nothing. Put it back on. Still does the same thing. And then I figured out that it was when you went to drive. When it went into drive was when it quit. So the windows would work in reverse, or when it was just sitting there running. But as soon as you went to drive, the windows would quit. There you go. There's some investigative work. Inside that gear shift actuator box that looked kind of fresh, had been taken apart. After spending a lot of time looking at this wiring diagram, I figured out that one of the wires that was connected to one switch that had 3 wires connected was not supposed to be connected. And somebody had connected it, and it was shorting it out when you went to drive. And to be honest with you, I found that fault in the computer system, the shop manual, because there was a little note saying that this wasn't used. And if you think about that computer program, which covers the full electrical system, but it's lots of PDFs, lots of pictures of stuff. And there's a lot of data to go through. These modern cars are really difficult to diagnose strange electrical problems. And when you think about the amount of wiring on this car, in the old days on that Silver Cloud 3, I don't think there's one wire less than 14 gauge, which is pretty thick wire, okay? I don't think there's one wire on this car less than 14 gauge. There's very few wires greater than 14 gauge on these cars, only the heavy power circuits. Everything else is super thin wire, 22 gauge, even 20, the next step up. Really, really thin wire. So the potential for faults, when you go push voltage through really small wires, and they're long wires, it's going to drop a lot. if there's even the slightest amount of break or rubbing against something. They're real delicate. So I'm just kind of whining about this now. I'm sorry about that. This is what I do. It's just difficult sometimes. So when you take your car to the dealership, whether it's PMC or not, and they say no fault found, you can understand why sometimes there's no fault found. And remember that the mechanics, it's a little different now, but they're paid basically on what they get done. So if they have a car that comes in and can't act up, and they can't plug their computer in, it doesn't give them a code, it's just an intermittent fault, they don't get paid. So why should they even try to figure out that obscure problem? This, in my opinion, that's unfortunate, but the problem is the complexity, I think, of it. Too many potential faults. So anyways, that's my rant on diagnosing electrical problems on modern cars. And these are not modern by any means. It's almost 20 years old, right?
Time flies by.
So anyways, do we have any questions aside from the thermostat schedule? None?
Why'd you have to keep changing the belt on that?
I don't know yet. To me, let's go over there. To me, it's usually when a belt keeps popping off, it's an alignment problem. Now, you know, there might be a slight alignment problem on that. It's back a little bit. One time it came in, it was twisted. One thing you also want to look out for is debris and bearings. So bearings, like this alternator has two bearings inside that rotor turns on. A lot of times the bearings will, like that looks fine, right? But I like to listen to them. So I'm going to use my stethoscope. I wish I could let you guys hear that, but it's kind of a scraping noise and then a krr, 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 krr. So a bearing on these is a caged bearing, which is a series of ball bearings pressed between two cages, and usually have little separators. So if the separators, if it's old, if the separators get bad and the ball bearings start running up on each other and the bearing starts going like this, occasionally it could lock up. Pop that belt, and then once the pressure's off it, it's fine. So that has a noise in it. That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to pull that alternator off. I'm going to take it apart, put some new bearings in it, and then I think that might correct the problem on this one, because now that I've finally listened to it, I was thinking about that. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night trying to solve problems. And that came to me the other night. Maybe we just got a bearing. Because when they really go bad, you can hear them outside. This one, you might be able to hear it if you get that mic real close. Hear that? Can you guys, anybody nodding? No? So back to the oil leaks. It's just like if your house has a water leak in it when it rains, I guarantee you where it's running down the wall, it's not leaking directly up there, above there. It's probably leaking on the other side of the house or on the corner of the house and coming through down beams and such. Same way on vehicles when you've got leaks. See this pileup right here? I guarantee you this thing locked up and it burned that belt. That's what happened. I'm almost positive that's the fault with the belt. So we've got leaks on this car. You always want to start high. So the highest spot on these cars typically is the valve covers or rocker covers. You can see down in there, let's see if we can, you guys can see. You can see residue. You see that mud, kind of greasy mud there? Okay, so those are starting to seep. Anywhere you see, it's kind of like I can't say that, but when the moisture, when they start to seep, and dust will collect on them. Let's get her up in the air. Let's go ahead and just